On April 18, 1906, at 5:12 a.m., a large earthquake hit Northern California. The quake was very strong, shaking cities and towns. Many buildings fell, and people were hurt. Fires started soon after the earthquake and burned for days. The fires spread quickly, destroying homes and streets. San Francisco was hit the hardest by both quake and fire. More than 3,000 people died, and thousands lost their homes. Over 80% of the city was ruined. This disaster is one of the worst in U.S. history. People felt the shaking far away, even in other states. Many were scared and tried to run to safer places. It was hard to help everyone in time. The earthquake caused more damage than anything the city had ever seen. Most homes and shops were broken or burned. Families had to sleep in the streets. This event changed San Francisco forever. The city had to rebuild from almost nothing, but it showed how people can work together in hard times. The San Andreas Fault is a long crack in the ground. It runs through California. This crack is where two big pieces of Earth's crust meet. These pieces are called plates. One plate moves north, and the other moves south. When they slide, the ground shakes. This sliding is what causes earthquakes. The 1906 earthquake happened because the plates moved quickly along the fault. The fault is very long, stretching about 810 miles. It runs from the south near Mexico to the north near the ocean. In 1906, the plates moved so much that the ground shifted up to 28 feet in some areas. The crack opened wide in some places. The movement along the fault also pushed the ground up and down. This caused even more damage to the land and buildings. The San Andreas Fault is still active today. This means it can move again in the future. Scientists study it to learn more about earthquakes. Studying faults helps scientists prepare for future quakes. Knowing where cracks are helps cities build safer buildings. In 1906, people did not know much about faults. Now we use this knowledge to save lives and reduce harm during quakes. The earthquake began at 5:12 a.m. It was very strong and lasted for about 42 seconds. A smaller shake came 20 seconds before the main quake. The shaking was felt in many places. People in Oregon, Nevada, and Los Angeles also felt it. Buildings broke, and the ground cracked. The strongest shaking happened near San Francisco. Some roads and railways were torn apart. Homes and shops fell down everywhere. The ground moved for about 296 miles along the San Andreas Fault. This was one of the biggest quakes ever in the U.S. The earthquake caused the ground to shift sideways. People saw roads and fences move far from where they were before. The shake was so strong that it changed the land. Some hills moved, and water from lakes spilled out onto the ground. Many people woke up scared as their homes shook. The loud noise of breaking wood and glass filled the air. Some people ran outside to avoid falling walls. Streets were filled with dust, and it was hard to see. After the quake, many people tried to help each other. Families looked for safe places to stay as the city fell apart. After the earthquake, fires started all over San Francisco. The fires were caused by broken gas pipes. Sparks from stoves and lamps lit the fires. These fires burned for 3 days. They spread quickly because there was no water to stop them. Water pipes were also broken in the quake. The fire destroyed most of the city. Over 25,000 buildings were burned. Homes, shops, and offices were turned to ash. Firefighters tried hard to stop the flames, but they did not have enough tools or water. They even used dynamite to blow up buildings. This plan was meant to stop the fire by making empty spaces, but the explosions made new fires instead of stopping the old ones. With no chief to lead them, the firefighters struggled. The fire chief had been hurt in the earthquake and could not help. Many people lost their homes to the fire. They set up tents in parks and slept outside. The streets were full of smoke and falling ash. The fire caused more damage than the earthquake itself. It destroyed over 80% of the city and left many people with nothing. Even years later, the memory of the fire stayed strong. People worked together to rebuild the city and make it safer for the future. More than 3,000 people died in the earthquake and fires. Many others were hurt. This made it one of the deadliest disasters in U.S. history. Chinatown was hit very hard, but many deaths there were not counted. People did not know the real number of lives lost. The quake and fire left over 200,000 people without homes. Families had to live in tents or on the streets for many months. The city set up camps in parks to help the homeless. Golden Gate Park was full of tents where people stayed to be safe. These camps gave people food, water, and a place to rest. Soldiers helped by bringing supplies and keeping order in the camps. Even with help, life was very hard for the homeless. Many people lost all their money and things in the quake and fires. Children missed school because schools were destroyed. Many families left the city to live with friends or family far away. Some people stayed in the camps for over 2 years. By then, new homes had been built, and people could leave the tents. The earthquake and fire changed the city forever. It taught people the need to prepare better and help each other in hard times. After the disaster, San Francisco started to rebuild right away. The city needed new homes, shops, and offices to bring people back. Builders worked fast to make streets and houses again. New laws were made so that buildings could be stronger and safer. By 1915, most of the city had been rebuilt. This was in time for a big fair that showed how much San Francisco had grown again. Many businesses moved to other cities after the quake, especially to Los Angeles. This helped Los Angeles grow faster than before. San Francisco stayed an important city, but it lost some jobs and trade to other places. It had to work hard to stay strong. Some parts of the city were rebuilt better than before. Chinatown, for example, became a nicer and more modern area. The 1906 earthquake helped scientists learn more about how the Earth moves. They studied the San Andreas Fault and how it caused the quake. They found that the ground moved along the fault for almost 300 miles. This showed how big and strong the fault's movement was. Scientists also learned about soil. They saw that buildings on soft soil shook more than those on hard rock. This helped them plan better buildings. They used tools to measure how much the land moved. In some places, it moved more than 20 feet during the quake. New maps showed which areas had the most shaking. These maps helped people understand which places were more dangerous. Scientists learned that strong shaking happens most on loose soil. Now, cities avoid building homes on soft ground when possible. The disaster changed how people thought about safety. New rules for building were made to protect against earthquakes and fires. People also started to prepare for future quakes. They kept extra food, water, and blankets to stay ready for emergencies. The quake became part of history. Every year, people remember it with events and stories about the brave acts of those who helped. Writers and artists shared stories of the quake. Books, photos, and films showed the damage and how people worked to rebuild. San Francisco became a symbol of strength. The city proved it could rise again, even after such a big disaster. The lessons from 1906 remind us to be ready and to work together. These ideas still help cities stay safe today. Families are also taught to stay ready. They keep food, water, and medicine at home in case another quake happens. Schools practice what to do during an earthquake. Students learn how to stay safe and where to go if the ground starts shaking. These steps help save lives and reduce harm. They make people feel safer, even in areas where big quakes might happen.